Dear students, from the previous modules, you now have quite a bit of Python code under your belt. Everything you have seen so far has consisted of sequential execution from the first line of program to its last line. But the world is often more complicated than that. Sometimes there is a need to decide the sequence in which the instructions in a program are to be executed. The decision control statements are used to execute only selected set of statements, and it can alter the flow of a sequence of instructions. These conditional statements allow the programmers to develop a program that determine which statements of the code should be executed and which should be ignored. In programming languages, conditional statements or conditional constructs are used to perform different computations or actions depending upon whether a condition evaluates to true or false. That is where control structures come in. A control structure directs the order of execution of the statements in a program. In the real world, we commonly must evaluate information around us and then choose one course of action or another based on what we observe. For example, consider the sentence, if the weather is nice, then I will play in the lawn. It is implied that if the weather is not nice, then I won't play in the lawn. In a Python program, if statement is there to perform this sort of decision making. It allows for conditional execution of a statement or group of statements based on the value of an expression. The condition usually uses comparisons and arithmetic expressions with variables. These expressions are evaluated to the Boolean values true or false. The statements for the decision taking are called conditional statements. Alternatively, they are also known as conditional expressions or conditional constructs. Conditional statements in Python are if statements, if-else statements, elif statements, nested if statements, if-elif-else statements. Python supports the usual logical conditions from mathematics like equals, not equals, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. These conditions can be used in several ways, most commonly in if statements and loops. Let us discuss how to use conditional statements. We can write programs that has more than one choice of actions depending upon a variable's value. Perhaps the most well-known statement type is the if statement. The if statement is the simplest form of decision control statement that is frequently used in decision making. You use the if statement to perform some action if one thing is true or any number of other actions if something else is true. The if condition evaluates a Boolean expression and executes the block of code only when the Boolean expression becomes true. It will run the body of the code only when if statement is true. We must use indentation to define that code that is executed based on whether a condition is met. When you want to justify one condition while the other condition is not true, then you use if statement. The syntax for if statement is if within parenthesis expression colon statement else statement. Let us see the flowchart of if statement. This diagram shows the flowchart of if statement. If the test expression evaluates to true, then body of if statement gets executed. If the test expression becomes false, then the body of if statement will not get executed. Let us see an example for if statement. Let us assign the number 5 to the variable called num. So, next thing is you have to check if the value of num is less than 10. If the condition becomes true, then the statement after the colon, that is print statement, gets executed and the string inside the print statement will get displayed. For example, here the value assigned is 5. The condition checks if the num is less than 10. Yes, the condition becomes true, 5 is less than 10. Therefore, the output will be num is smaller than 10. Consider another example which involves Boolean expression. Here the number called 33 is assigned to variable A and variable B is initialized with 200, and inside the decision making statement if the condition called B greater than A gets executed, and if the condition becomes true, then the string called B is greater than A will be printed. Here the B value is 200, A value is 33. So, definitely 200 greater than 33, the condition becomes true. Therefore, the print statement gets executed and the output will be B is greater than A. Python relies on indentation using white space to define scope in the code. Other programming languages often use curly brackets for this purpose. Consider the scenario: if the weather is nice, then I will mow the lawn, weed the garden, take the dog for a walk. If the weather is not nice, then I won't do any of these things. In all the examples what we discussed so far, each if expression has been followed by only a single statement. There needs to be some way to say if expression is true, do all of the following things. The usual approach taken by most programming languages is to define a syntactic device that groups multiple statements into one compound statement or block. A block is regarded syntactically as a single entity. When it is the target of an if statement and expression is true, then all the statements in the block are executed. If expression is false, then none of them are executed. Virtually all programming languages provide the capability to define the blocks, but they don't all provide it in the same way. Let us see how Python does it. In all the examples as we discussed so far, each if expression has been followed by only a single statement. There needs to be some way to say if expression is true, do all of the things. The usual approach taken by most programming languages is to define a syntactic device that groups multiple statements into one compound statement or block. A block is regarded syntactically as a single entity. When it is the target of an if statement and expression is true, then all the statements in the block are executed. If expression is false, then none of them will be executed. Virtually all programming languages provide the capability to define the blocks, but they don't all provide it in the same way. Let us see how Python does it. In all the examples seen, each if expression has been followed by only a single statement. There needs to be some way to say If expression is true, do all of the things. Indentation is used to define compound statements or blocks. In a Python program, contiguous statements that are intended to the same level are considered to be part of the same block. If statement without indentation will raise an error. Let us see example for this scenario. Now the value 33 is assigned to the variable a and b is initialized with 200. If b greater than a, the condition is true, then print statement gets evaluated, but here the indentation is missing. Therefore, if we execute this particular program, then output will be the file number, the file name with line number 4, printf b is greater than a, there is an indentation error, expected and intended block will be displayed on the screen. Let us see the benefits of using indentation in Python. Python's use of indentation is clean, concise and consistent. In programming languages that do not use the offside rule, indentation of code is completely independent of block definition and code function. It is possible to write code that is intended in a manner that does not actually match how the code executes, thus creating a mistaken impression when a person just glances at it. This sort of mistake is virtually impossible to make in Python. Use of indentation to define blocks forces you to maintain code formatting standards you probably should be using anyway. Let us see the negative side. Many programmers don't like to be forced to do things a certain way. They tend to have strong opinions about what looks good and what doesn't, and they don't like to be short on and they don't like to be shoehorned into a specific choice. Some editors insert a mix of space and tab characters to the left of intended lines, which makes it difficult for the Python interpreter to determine indentation levels. On the other hand, it is frequently possible to configure editors not to do this. It generally is not considered desirable to have a mix of tabs and spaces in source code anyhow, no matter the language. If you have only one statement to execute, you can put it on the same line as the if statement. This is referred to as shorthand if. For example, if a greater than b colon print within double quotes, if you type a is greater than b, then it will be displayed as a is greater than b. Now let us see how to use else condition. If else statement evaluates the Boolean expression and executes the block of code present inside the if block if the condition becomes true and executes a block of code present in the else block if the condition becomes false. The else condition is usually used when you have to judge one statement on the basis of another. If one condition goes wrong, then there should be another condition that should justify the statement or logic. An else statement can be combined with an if statement. An else statement contains the block of code that executes if the conditional expression in the if statement resolves to 0 or a false value. The else statement is an optional statement and there could be at most only one else statement following if. The syntax of if else is if expression colon statements else colon statements. Now let us see the flowchart for if else statement. Slide 5. This flowchart represents the if else statement syntax. If the test expression becomes true, then body of if statement gets executed. If the test expression becomes false, then body of else part gets executed. Next, we are going to see an example for if else statement. Here the value 5 is initialized to the variable num, and if num is greater than 10, then print number is greater than 10, else print number is less than 10. So, since the value is 5, 5 is greater than 10 condition becomes false, then else part gets executed and the output will be number is less than 10. If you have only one statement to execute, one for if and one for else, you can put it all on the same line. This is referred as shorthand if else. For example, if A greater than B, print A, else print B. There might be many instances when your else condition won't give you the desired result. It will print out the wrong result as there is a mistake in program logic. In most cases, this happens when you have to justify more than two statement or condition in a program. An example will better help you to understand this concept. Let us assume there are two variables x and y with same value, that is 1 and 1, and the program statement is x is greater than y, which is wrong. This is because it checks the first condition, that is if condition, and if it fails, then it prints out the second condition, that is else condition, as default. In next step, we will see how we can correct this error. To correct this error made by else condition, we can use elif statement. By using elif condition, you are telling the program to print out the third condition or possibility when the other condition goes wrong or incorrect. Elif statements are similar to if else statements, but elif statements evaluate multiple conditions. Sometimes there are more than two possibilities. In that case, we can use the elif statement. It stands for else if, which means that if the original if statement is false and the elif statement is true, execute the block of code following the elif statement. The syntax of the if elif statement is if expression 1 colon statements, elif expression 2 colon statements, elif expression 3 colon statements, else colon statements. If the condition 1 is true, the statements in the block statement block 1 will be executed. If not, condition 2 will be executed. If condition 2 evaluates to true, statement block 2 will be executed. If condition 2 is false, the statements in statement block 3 will be executed. Let us see the flowchart for this scenario. So, if the test expression of if condition becomes true, then body of if statement will get executed. If it is false, another test expression of elif statement gets executed. If the condition in the elif statement is true, then body of that elif statement gets executed. If the condition becomes false, then body of else statement gets executed. Let us see an example for this scenario. Now the value 10 is initialized to num variable. If num is equivalent to 0, that is condition. If the condition becomes true, then print number is 0. Elif num is greater than 5, print number is greater than 5, else print number is smaller than 5. Here the value initialized to the variable num is 10. So, when we execute the if statement, num equal to 0, the condition becomes false. Therefore, elif statement gets executed. There it checks whether the num value is greater than 5. Yes, the num value is 10, so it is greater than 5. Therefore, that print statement gets executed and the output will be number is greater than 5. Python supports one additional decision making entity called a conditional expression. In its simplest form, the syntax of the conditional expression is as follows. Expression 1, if, conditional expression, else, expression 2. A common use of the conditional expression is to select variable assignment. For example, suppose you want to find the largest of two numbers. Of course, there is a built-in function max that does just this that you could use. You could use a standard if statement with an else clause. If a greater than b, x is equivalent to a, else x is equivalent to b. But a conditional expression is shorter and arguably more readable as well. X is equivalent to a if a greater than b, else b. Next, we will discuss about how to execute conditional statement with minimal code. In this step, we will see how we can condense out the conditional statement. Instead of executing code for each condition separately, we can use them with a single code. For example, the statement can be written as A if B else C. Next, we move to nested if statement. Nested if statement is one in which an if statement present inside another if statement which is present inside another if statement and so on. The syntax of the nested if statement is if expression 1 statements, if expression 2 statements. Let us see an example for this. Here the value 5 is initialized to the variable num. If num greater than 0, then print number is positive. If num less than 10, print number is less than 10. So, here since the value initialized to the num variable is 5, the first condition checks num greater than 0. Yes, the condition becomes true. Therefore, the print statement displays the number is positive. Then it will check next if statement num less than 10. Yes, this condition is also becomes true. How? Because the num value is 5, 5 less than 10, this condition is also true. Therefore, the statement inside the print statement gets executed. Therefore, the number is less than 10. So, the output will be number is positive, number is less than 10. Well, till now we discussed about various types of conditional statements. Now, let us take a real life example. Let us say in a savings bank account, a user A has rupees 10,000. The user A visits the ATM to withdraw money from his savings account. Now, the program which handles the ATM transactions should be able to perform in every situation, like the program should be aware of the user's bank account balance and should not allow the user to withdraw money more than the available balance in his account. Also, the program must update the account balance once the user has withdrawn money from the account to keep the records updated. Let us write a small piece of code to stop user from withdrawing money more than the available account balance. Now, the amount 1000 is initialized to saving amount. So, withdraw amount is initialized to int of raw input. So, we have to get the input value, that is the amount to withdraw from the user. Then if statement checks if withdraw amount is greater than savings amount, then print insufficient balance, because we cannot get the amount which is not available in our account. So, this condition becomes true, means then automatically it will display insufficient balance. Now, we are having the balance as 10,000. So, amount to withdraw is 2000. So, 2000 is less than 10,000. Therefore, this particular statement gets executed true. In this program, if the user enters any amount more than rupees 10,000, a message is displayed on the screen saying insufficient funds. In this ATM example, we forgot to subtract the withdrawn amount from the savings account balance. Since now we have an additional else condition to use, we can print a warning with the message insufficient balance if the saving amount is less than the withdraw amount, or else we can subtract the withdrawn amount from the savings amount to update the account balance. If withdraw amount is greater than saving amount, then print insufficient balance, else saving amount is calculated by subtracting withdraw amount from the saving amount, and the current account balance will be displayed by using print statement. And with the else block introduced, in case there is sufficient balance, the withdraw amount will be subtracted from the savings amount and the updated account balance will be displayed on the screen. With if and else, now we can diverge the flow of execution into two different directions. In case of a savings account, there will be only two cases: you have sufficient money or you don't. But what if we come across some situation where there are more than two possibilities? In such cases, we use yet another statement that is accompanied with the if and else statements called elif. To understand this elif, let us take another example. You are given a time and you have to tell what phase of the day it is. For example, morning, noon, afternoon, evening or night. So, you will have to check the given time against multiple ranges of time within which each of the 5 phases lies. Therefore, the conditions are morning 6 to 11:59, noon 12, afternoon 12:01 to 17, evening 17:01 to 20, night 20 to 5:59. So, if time is greater than or equal to 6 and time less than 12, print morning. Elif time is equivalent to 12, print noon. Elif time greater than 12 and time less than or equal to 17, print afternoon. Elif time greater than 17 and time less than or equal to 20, print evening. Elif time greater than 20 and time less than 24, or time greater than or equal to 0 and time less than 6, print night. Else print invalid time. Notice the logical operators that have been used in each condition in this program. This example demonstrates how you will generally be using them with if-else statements. Printing the phase of the day by checking the range of time can be done without using elif as well by nesting if and else only. As you can see in this program, all we did was we started by adding a condition to the if block and then used another if else block in its else block, and we kept on doing the nesting until all the conditions were taken care of. This, however, is a little tedious than using elif. However, that is not all it is about. Nesting is very useful in various other situations, and in some cases it is the only way forward. Also, if you remember our first example, while explaining the if statement, the savings bank account example, there is actually a quicker way to do it, a one-line way, because it is a Python. The logic is explained as if saving greater than withdraw, then saving is equivalent to saving minus withdraw, else saving will remain as it is and there will be no transaction. A conditional statement in Python is handled by if statements, and we saw various other ways we can use conditional statements like if and else over here. If condition is used when you need to print out the result when one of the conditions is true or false. Else condition is used when you want to print out the statement when your one condition fails to meet the requirement. Elif condition is used when you have third possibility as the outcome. You can use multiple elif statements to check for fourth, fifth, sixth possibilities in your code. We can use minimal code to execute conditional statements by declaring all condition in a single statement to run the code. If statement can be nested. Thank you for your patient listening. I hope you understand this module well. Thank you.